Welcome, huge movie fanatic Nate, stopping on by. This time I'm coming your way to review a movie that I've known about forever, but haven't seen until just recently, stopping on by to review the motion picture from I think it's 1987, horror movie by the name of Blood Diner. So my history with this movie goes all the way back to 1991. I was 14 years old, and I'm pretty sure it was that same year that I came across this at a place. I don't think I would have paid. It's got like $10.95 on the back. I don't think I would have paid at $10.95 for this. It probably had like a $2 or $3 sticker, maybe even 99-cent sticker. I don't know. I can't. I wouldn't have paid no $11 for this at the age of 14. But this is the official splatter movie guide from Fantaco. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but as you can see here, more than 400 of the goriest, grossest, most outrageous movies ever made by John McCary, author of splatter movies, breaking the last taboo of the screen. This book has a copyright of 1989, so when I got it, it was a whopping 2 years old. But there was this famous video recorded in, I think, late summer of 1991, where I mentioned it about it before on this channel, where I'm making my dad help me rebuild a cardboard Psycho, from the movie Psycho house, because he had accidentally destroyed the one I built the year prior in 1990 when I first discovered the Psycho films. But before we get started, he so often got a little cup of ice cream and he put strawberries on it, and he comes into my room and he looks at this gory ass freaking cover, and I'll put a little audio clip from him reading the front cover, kind of like probably not so thrilled that his 14-year-old son has something like this, and he just kind of, as the more knowing or possibly concerned adult of this, splatter obsessed 14-year-old boy, he kind of reads out this bit here in a way that's not so excited, because he's probably not so happy that his 14-year-old son is into this kind of stuff. He'd probably much rather had me been interested in hot rods like he was, but alas, I was interested in splatter movies. So this movie guide is basically just alphabetical from the beginning to the end by movie title, and just basically gives a rundown, some info, release year, maybe the rundown of what, the small rundown of the plot and what he thinks of the movie, and this and that. So that's what the official splatter movie guide is all about.
Goriest, grossest.
Grossest?
That's what it says.
So?
Most outrageous movies ever made.
What a duh.
So while my dad was eating his ice cream and strawberries, he was flipping through these pages, probably from the beginning, and he came across, as we can see here, on page 14 here, is none other than Blood Diner, Lightning Pictures, 1987, color, 88 minutes. So my dad read this little synopsis here. The author of this book says, uneven but frequently hilarious parody of splatter movies in general, and H.G. Lewis's Blood Feast in particular. Mass murderer Uncle Anwar, demented perpetrator of the Happy Times all-girl Glee Club massacre, is shot down by police before he can collect enough body parts for the ritual blood buffet he hopes will bring long-dead Egyptian princess Shitar back to life. I don't know if I pronounced that right. He's trained his dim-witted nephews well. However, when they grow up, they take up where he left off, opening up a successful health food diner that specializes in things such as fish fingers, which are actually the severed digits of a Snoopy IRS man. The film is filled with outrageous splatter sight gags, like the beheading of a prostitute with the end of a broom, and equally outrageous dialogue, though the latter is sometimes a bit difficult to understand. If its cult reputation grows, Blood Diner could become the Little Shop of Horrors of splatter movies, and this author lists this film as highly recommended. So that's the author of that Splatter Film Guide or whatever the hell's, thoughts on this movie. It's really interesting that I first became aware of this movie basically by my dad. He read the little synopsis, I'm not Sean Connery, he read the little synopsis and then he asked, as you can hear in this audio clip,
Ever see Blood Diner
No.
around or anything?
No. Why? Tell me why.
Highly recommended by this guy.
pardon the 14-year-old me being a little asshole. My dad was used to it. Maybe he shouldn't have been, but at any rate, that's how kind of sometimes our relationship, or sometimes how how we interacted with each other. But obviously, after reading that synopsis, my dad was kind of interested to see Blood Diner, and alas, I don't think unless he saw it without me, it's something that he would ever go on to see. And one thing that interested me about the movie, because I think it was not too long ago, I don't know, within the last 10 years, whatever, that of course we know that Vestron Video, Lionsgate Vestron Video series on Blu-ray, and Chopping Mall and all these kind of Vestron Video title releases came out slowly but surely on Blu-ray, and I'm pretty sure this film, Blood Diner, actually is on quite possibly the Vestron Video collector's series on Blu-ray or whatever. I was able to watch this movie, thank goodness gracious, for free on TubiTV.com, and it was interesting, knowing about this movie for such a long time. I mean, obviously since 1991, just decades, and never having seen it until now. And I gotta say, I mean, it could have a lot to do with just my age at this point, pushing 50. I want to say that I very much would have had a different opinion about this movie if I had, for example, if me and my dad had rented it when I was 14 years old. I probably would have been not so harsh on this movie. But pushing 50 now and having seen so much of this kind of stuff, and one thing that the author doesn't mention is, well, I mean, Peter Jackson, I think this is around the time, the book was published, maybe Bad Taste was being produced or was really new, but one thing that the book being too old to really kind of compare, this film, Blood Diner, he mentioned, Herschel Gordon Lewis, which I would agree with. Obviously, it's very similar in the Herschel Gordon Lewis vein, but also a cross between, Toxic Avenger existed at the time. I'm surprised he didn't compare it to a Troma movie like Toxic Avenger, but I would also kind of compare it to early Peter Jackson stuff like Bad Taste or Dead Alive, aka Brain Dead and stuff. And I was much more a big of a fan of, I discovered we call it Dead Alive in the United States, but also known as Peter Jackson's Dead Alive, also known as Brain Dead. We saw that, well, I say we, me and my teenage acquaintances at the time in the early to mid 90s when it came out on Trimark Home Video or whatever in North America here. And that kind of thing I really liked as a teenager. Me and Beth watched it. Someone had put up the uncut version on YouTube years ago. Me and Beth watched, Dead Alive or, Brain Dead or whatever. And I was just like, yeah, I can remember, liking this a lot. This movie was just the holy grail as a teenager, but watching it as an adult who's, middle-aged or whatever, it's just like, I mean, it was kind of, I'm talking about Brain Dead, aka Dead Alive right now. It didn't, revisiting it, again years ago, didn't do a whole hell of a lot for me. There was like some nostalgia and just like, but honestly, a lot of the stuff kind of grossed me out, a lot more now than maybe it did at the time. So anyway, what I'm trying to say very long-windedly, as I often do, is I might have liked this a lot more as a teenager or something, and having seen it for the very first time as a pushing 50-year-old, a geezer and middle-aged and stuff, it's like, it's kind of one of those things, like I say, that it's like a Troma movie where every single character is like this comic book, just, off the wall character, where it's like a comic book movie in a way where it's just not like reality. And at my age, I really don't go in for this kind of shit. And like I say, if you're younger or if you are my age or older, that still do go in for this kind of stuff where it's like, hallelujah. Yeah, pardon the brightness there, but that's just the way it goes. If you are of the personality where you like this kind of just overplayed kind of Troma, Toxic Avenger, kind of just garbly gook movies, this might be right up your alley. Admittedly, since it's been like, I don't know what, a week or two since I've seen this, and I've been busy and I haven't been able to review it until just now. Admittedly, this is kind of a sloppy review, but good thing I read that's why I decided to read the whole, the guy's whole spiel out of that book, because it'll explain the movie a lot better than I can explain it. I couldn't remember if the guy was the kid's dad. Turns out he's the kid's uncle. Yes, it's very bright, but that you can see me, so that's all that matters. But yeah, I guess that's pretty much, really what I'll say. At my age, I guess I'm repeating myself. Gosh dang it, that's what can happen at my age, I guess. But I guess this is kind of a, maybe a little more sloppy of a huge movie fanatics review, because I can't remember a whole hell of a lot. All I know is, yeah, very, I'd actually, Troma movies were relatively new at the time. I can't remember when Toxic Avenger, that might have been, was that the first Troma movie? It's very possible. That made it come out in like 84, 85, 86. So, Toxic Avenger still would have been really new when this book was published. So I'd compare it more so. I mean, it is a mixture of Herschel Gordon Lewis garbage. I don't really like Herschel Gordon Lewis stuff very much at all. And, but I'd call it, it's very much more similar to, if you know the, Toxic Avenger, the original. I gotta say the original, because I guess it's a remake of Toxic Avenger. But Toxic Avenger from the 80s, the original film, that 80s Troma stuff, is very comparable to this movie, although this movie, I guess, has a little bit of its own personality, but is very comparable to just the nonsense, nonsensical nonsense that can be found in Troma movies like Toxic Avenger. I haven't seen all that many Troma movies. I've seen all the Toxic Avengers, but I can't remember. Yeah, I don't know if I've seen any other Troma movies, but I'm familiar with, anyway, four of the original Toxic Avengers. But that's enough Troma for me, and I'm not necessarily a Troma fan. So, when I'm thinking about this back in my, in memory, and going through, kind of running through what I do remember, like I honestly think I would have probably liked this a lot more at 14, because it's got a decent amount of, like, Herschel Gordon Lewis-esque kind of, and also early Peter Jackson-esque, and I guess early Troma, kind of just, whatever, kind of gore, and you got some, like gratuitous female nudity. It's very much like Bride of Reanimator would go on to do as well, like the kind of the, presumably augmented breast chick who they're building, who's always standing in the background topless, and her, like, perfect augmented tits just there for everyone to see, and the poor girl just her role is stand there topless, and just kind of staying as still as possible. And I think as the movie wears on, it seems like they had to, you paid for toplessness by the minute or something. It seems like as the movie wore on, like she was in the background, but she was covered up or something. But yeah, it didn't do a hell of a lot for me, I'm afraid, and it took all I had to, like, finish it. Kind of my obsessive compulsive persuasion, my OCP. I really can't necessarily watch part of a movie. Like, my OCP is kind of makes me finish movies, and more or less. So my OCP, damn it, made me finish this movie, which if it wasn't for OCP, I probably would have just stopped watching, a third or halfway through or whatever. It got a decent amount of nasty stuff that grossed me out, and it's just like, give me a break. And yeah, just remembering the end with the demonic woman or whatever with the mouth in her stomach or whatever, like all this kind of stuff. I might have, enjoyed it more as a teenager. But maybe not maybe not even. I never went in for this kind of, demonic kind of movie per se. So I don't, I would have probably liked aspects of this more as a teenager, but as a whole, it wouldn't have really been my forte. I was much more about backwoods, mortal, hit killers and this kind of stuff. Guys in hockey masks running around Angela, killing campers, and this kind of stuff. Rather than like demonic kind of witchcraft stuff. And oh god, another thing that just flushed into my mind, the crazy at the beginning of the film, the crazy uncle was gunned down in the front yard, I think, and then somehow, the kid, I think the older, when the two nephews were older, they dug up Uncle's body, and they basically, this is like a like 3 years, 3 years before RoboCop 2, and it's like very similar thing. You know, Kane, how they harvest the brain and eyeballs of Kane from RoboCop 2. They did it first in well, maybe a movie did it before this movie, but it's got the old, they harvest the brain and the eyeballs of the uncle in a jar of bubbling water. So the uncle is always, and they actually got moving eyeballs on the brain in the jar of water, which you got to give them props for making them eyeballs go side to side, back and forth. But the brain, uncle's brain in the jar with the moving eyeballs is always, you know, calling the shots, telling the dumb nephews what to do and this kind of stuff. So yeah, I guess, you know, oh God, you know, so there's, you know, it's not completely devoid of creativity or whatever, but on the whole, not really something that I go in for these days as I'm, you know, approaching older age and this kind of stuff. So what would my star rating for Blood Diner? And oh, incidentally, and I think my dad, I don't know if my dad ever would have, there was no picture of the video cassette cover in the book, as you could see. So my dad, I don't know, he probably would have been much more even more excited to see the movie if he saw the cover, which I wanted to say before I end the review is kind of misleading. It makes it look like a movie that takes place in the 50s, in a 50s diner kind of a thing, because the cover is actually kind of cool, and it makes it look, I don't, in my opinion, the cover doesn't represent the tone of the movie. It makes it seem like a completely different, more serious kind of a slasher movie, and the I think the class of the, you know, the video cover for Blood Diner is much more classy with that old looking kind of diner, and it just more gives the more classy of a feel than the movie is. Like the actual diner in the movie is just this corner, you know, just location, business location, just on some corner of some city street, and looks like garbage, and it looks like nothing on the front cover. And that's another thing I wanted to mention, the cover makes the movie look a lot better than it is. Then when you watch the movie, it's just like, what? I mean, the diner in the movie looks like just cardboard cutout compared to the classic kind of 50s diner featured on the VHS or video cover art or whatever. So yeah, just me just tearing Blood Diner apart. What I was trying to say earlier is my star rating. Yeah, this was just, you know, this was just a miserable to get through. I can, that might be too high. Tell you what, it's probably too high, but I'll be generous and give it 1/2 of a star. So not even a full star, 1/2 of a star out of 4 stars for Blood Diner. Definitely not, God, am I mentally just deficient? Like, it seems like I'm really repeating myself a lot in this review. I might be mentally deficient, but definitely not something that's up my alley. Feel free to, if you're curious about the movie after seeing my review, feel free to check out TubiTV.com, see if it's still there. You know, some stuff probably stay on Tubi a lot longer than other stuff. It probably all depends or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's got some, like, I don't know, quote unquote, possibly creative or funny, like, kills or whatever. But like I say, at my age, like, I'm kind of past this kind of, you know, trauma, early Peter Jackson, just gore, kind of adolescent gore, garbage nonsense stuff. So unfortunately, it doesn't do anything for me at my current age, but I guess that will happen. So I guess that pretty much does it for this review. Apologies if, you know, I repeated stuff way too much. I'll try to work on that. But thank you very much for watching this review. Hope you guys enjoyed, and as always, we'll catch you on the next video.